this will be us presenting. So when we're not presenting, mute and turn off cameras, because otherwise the bandwidth.
Yeah. I guess if Jay doesn't get on, I can introduce you.
Okay.
Right. This is the. So Mariah, you're speaking first, and then Drew, you're speaking second. Is it two separate? Yep.
Yeah, two separate things.
And screen sharing, turn share intro slides, start streaming, remind attendees. Oh, the questions, where in the Q&A. Okay, perfect. Did you just do that, Mariah?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's reset. Cool.
Questions to present this time. Where did the questions come in? Do they come in through the chat?
The Q&A, so Elizabeth, if you join, if you go to the attendee hub and you just click on the link of the session, you don't press join because that's, you'll see duplicate video, but that is how you'll be able to.
Session. Okay. Did you just do that, Brian?
Pardon?
Is that Jay?
I don't see Jay.
Oh, I see a Q&A. Okay, got it. I see it. Okay, so I'm in also the other screen.
Yes.
Do we want to begin? It's one.
Sure.
Okay, and is Jay on this? Jay Quorum? Okay, maybe he's having problems.
The only two presentations on there, I saw Jay listed on it. So.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce our speakers today, and we have Mariah Modson and Drew Decker. Mariah will give her presentation first, followed by Drew, and she will give a presentation on a collaborative effort towards one authoritative NHD, which is National Hydrologic Dataset for Arizona. And Mariah Modson, she's a GIS analyst from the Arizona State Land Department. She's been working in the GIS field for almost 5 years after graduating with a natural resources degree. So, Mariah, are you ready?
I am ready. I'm going to stop sharing that so then I can share my other screen. I'm going to turn my video off just for bandwidth purposes. Been having some issues with our office Wi-Fi here. And I need to share my screen again. Okay, can you see my screen? So Elizabeth or somebody can tell me that it's going through to the participant side.
Yeah, nice blue title page.
Okay, alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. As Elizabeth mentioned, I'm Mariah Modson. I work for the Arizona State Land Department. And today I'll be sharing with you how, between myself and others on the AGIC Council, have been creating this authoritative data set for Arizona's hydrologic features. So as many of you have heard probably multiple times already, between the opening sessions with Shay yesterday and today, AGIC is a governor-appointed council. So all the members that serve on the head AGIC council are appointed by the governor to be there. Under them are 6 committees, each with their subsequent work groups. For this initiative, we are under the data committee, which houses the Natural Resources Workgroup, and within the Natural Resources Workgroup, they spawned this NHD pilot work group, which is working on this initiative. So as it stands right now, the United States Geological Survey, USGS, serves out the National Hydrography Dataset, which is commonly known, like Elizabeth said, as the NHD. This data set right now, it covers the state, but it's not necessarily consistent with the features on the ground. There are flow lines that start and stop that don't connect. So with this being said, various organizations across the state, local levels, federal levels, have took it upon themselves and created a data set themselves that serves the purposes of their business. So independent of any others who are also doing the same, and as you can imagine, doing so results in contradicting information for users looking at what they're seeing as available out there as additional data sets and doing any sort of analysis. Like I said, if those flow lines aren't connected in any way, there causes some error there. So that's where we come along. We're here to create an authoritative hydrographic data set for the entire state of Arizona, to make all the lines connected, make it all flow smoothly, no pun intended, and serve that out to the public for everyone to use. And our first step was to review and assess contributed data sets to determine the best source to use as like our parent data set, to use as our basis to go off with further data we collect. And so on the team doing this data analysis is myself, GIS analyst at the Arizona State Land Department, Elizabeth Vanderloo, who is your moderator at this session. She is a GIS manager for Pima County. We also have Jeremy Johnson as a GIS manager with Matrix New World Engineering. We have Benjamin Hickson, who's a senior GIS analyst for Pima Association of Governments, also known as PAG. We also have Lisa Gallion, who is a GIS specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. We have Cody Maynard, who is a GIS analyst at DEQ. And last but not least, Camille Mayberry, who is a hydrology intern at DWR. All of us are the ones who have been getting our hands dirty, took a deep dive into the data, and have been working on a workflow as to how we can use it, what steps we can take to get it all incorporated together. And this started way back before COVID, December of 2019 was when the Natural Resources Group kind of had a meeting, and it was brought to their attention that there are inconsistencies in the coverage of the NHD data set that USGS serves out. And so the group decided that they were going to start planning for a workshop to get the AGIC community involved, to kind of hear from everyone else their input on if this is, kind of a high level need for just the kind of the people who were in the work group. Is it, widely needed by everybody, no matter where you're from or what agency you're working in? And so at this work group, as you can imagine, there was a resounding response that this work needed to be done. Everybody would be benefiting from it. It wasn't just a small pool of people who would be needing this. So that workshop happened. We got all the responses from the community, and we knew what we needed to do. So we created the pilot team from the Natural Resources Work Group and started brainstorming and work planning for how we can tackle such a big feat. So after kind of a couple of months of brainstorming, putting out feelers, reaching out to people across the state to see what data sets they have or what they've been using, in October of last year, the pilot team created another team beneath them, which is the team I mentioned previously as the data analysis team. And we took the collected data sets, we analyzed them, we looked and compared and contrasted the attributes for commonalities, because if we were going to be incorporating this all into one data set, we need a way to join the features together or know which features are the same, even if, you know, there's different codings or different names and the attributes. So we looked at all of those things. We visually looked at comparison on using like ArcGIS online maps, seeing physically like where the lines differed or not. And so after all of that, or as we were in the middle of doing that, we had a member of the pilot work group, Drew Decker from USGS, who is your speaker up next. He has been a great help in getting us what we need to go forward with this, and he brought it to our attention that in order to make any of this applicable and available as part of the NHG data set, we needed to go through some formal training, and this is put on the USGS. And so right away, right off the bat, Cody and myself attended the first round of training. And this is where we kind of were told what needs to happen, how the process happens. It gave us a good idea as to what we kind of should be looking at doing while we're going through this analysis and brainstorming our workflow. Knowing what we needed in the end kind of helps us figure out how we get there in the first place. And like I said, after all of the analysis and review, we figured out, you know, some common attributes that were across the data sets that would give us a better way of bringing it all together. And you might think, well, how is this data set not already existing? Why is, you know, this little subgroup of AGIC doing all this work? Like how, like that doesn't seem right. Well, like I said, USGS has the National Hydrographic Dataset that's out there, and that should be the resource that you need. However, USGS has a way, since they're federal level, they cover the whole nation, they can't exactly be the ones that are sitting at a desk looking at, you know, the Tempe Town Lake and figuring out if the boundaries are still there or not. Like that's way too minute of a task for them. And so what USGS has are state stewards. They are designated individuals by USGS who are that middleman, who are the ones local to the area or the state who reach out to the local counties, the cities, state agencies, and does the data collection and approval of any changes that should be made. And then they push it forward to USGS's like QC steps and such. Well, state steward sounds awesome. However, Arizona has not had a person in this role for probably like 15, 20 years. All that time, cities were growing, neighborhoods were being built, and, you know, Joe Smith's farm that has a creek going through it may not be there anymore. It may be a Target or a Walmart now. So that effort of us coming and making changes like this is very, very important in further processing and data collection and such. So with USGS's help, we have kind of been acting as the group, doing the duties of the state steward, like I said, we're using Drew as a gracious guide, helping us along as we're working on this project, getting us the tools and tips and tricks that we need to keep this going. So the data sets that we ended up collecting after all of our trials and tribulations were from Pima County, DEQ, DWR, and then obviously the NHD data set from USGS. And as I mentioned, with Cody and mine's training, knowing what we needed in the end result to go into the NHD data set, the attributes that we needed included the F code, F type, flow direction, the GNIS ID, GNSI name, and reach code. These were the attributes that we were specifically trying to find and pull out within these data sources, because we knew that those needed to stay with us throughout whatever process we continued with. We needed to keep those intact. So fast forward a couple of months, another couple members of our group, Camille and Ben, attended another round of the USGS training. This put us in a great position where any one of us can be the one submitting changes to USGS's QC process, not just relying on one person, which going forward is going to be very helpful. We obviously had to create like a pilot area where we focused our efforts in at first, and we decided on a specific HUC 8. And by July, a few months ago, we had 80% of our initial review completed. Fast forward until September, we had completed the review of data in that initial HUC pilot area. And at that time, also in September, is when I myself had attended the Arizona Hydrological Society Symposium and presented this information and these findings to them as well. And again, resounding responses that how could this not already exist? You know, this is, we've been looking for this. We need this now. So it has definitely, you know, over the last year of us trying to figure out what to do and how to do it, it's been kind of a little pat on the back knowing that we have all the support of these organizations and individuals wanting this information in the end. And in October, after our initial data review, we realized it's going to take a lot to cover the whole state of Arizona. We started at one HUC 8, and there are 84 HUC 8s in the whole entire state. So trying not to make this a 10-year project, one of the individuals on our data analysis team, Ben, has kind of created like a modeling script where we can compare and contrast the common attributes that I mentioned between the data set, the line length, those kinds of things, that to hopefully get this to become more of an automated process. So as I said, we had an initial pilot area. It was this HUC 8 you can see here outlined in blue, which is the Upper San Pedro. It was a good place for us to start with because, you know, all the Joe Smiths with their farmlands weren't necessarily demolished into Walmarts quite yet. So we didn't have a whole lot of urbanization going on that would severely impact our preliminary review of data. We were able to get our toes wet, figure out, you know, how we can make this happen in the first place without just jumping right into the deep end and going over our heads. So part of the little insight as to how we were doing this. As I mentioned, we had an ArcGIS Online web map that we used as a team where we pulled in the data sets. You can see here, a little hard to see, the green outline, and you can see the names. I think I can use a laser. So here you can see these green lines are the boundaries of the HUC 8. and we had them labeled so we knew where we were working, how we could keep track of the review, whether it was done, whether we were in the process of looking through it, you know, holding on to the HUC ID number, and the blue lines versus the orange lines, you know, were the multiple data sets that were contributed for us to review. And, you know, you can see that, you know, there's some orange lines where there's not blue lines. Over here, there's blue where there's not orange. That sort of thing is what we were looking for, seeing, you know, kind of getting to that point of which data set would be the parent for us to go off of, was which one seemed to have the more features, more accurate features, not having, you know, lines going through the Walmarts of where places have been built, that sort of thing. So using ArcGIS Online, using, you know, the contributed data, we were able to come up with this workflow that, you know, we could keep track of who was working on what, tracking our progress and completing the HUC 8, and using a given, I guess, coding system as to, you know, going through the data sets, which one was better, which one might, you know, is missing line work from this one or that one, and using that in the end as part of the scripting that Ben is running to make this automated, where based on the features that we were finding that were accurate or not accurate that needed to be removed, could hopefully maybe get the computer to read those signs and inputs that we give it to make this more automated and not have to do all the work. And all of this was available to preview for anybody who wanted to track our progress and keep us in line. We have if you're aware of AGIC's website, there is a landing page for the Natural Resources Workgroup, and it shows the initiatives that the work group is working on, collaborative projects such as this, and using the coding, the in progress or not attributes in the data set, we were able to kind of have this thumbnail on that landing page for, you know, the pilot group above us, the Natural Resources Work Group above that, to be seeing our progress along the way and knowing how long it was taking and how much we need to make this automated. So, as I mentioned, Ben is an all-star of making some scripting codes being ran. Upon preliminary findings, about 38% of the data sets we had collected were not consistent. So, I mean, that helps knowing that, you know, there's less than 50% of the state's flow lines that we would need to kind of deep dive into, but 38% is still a lot. So we're trying to fine tune some of those scripting analysis to dwindle that number down, make it maybe read the sources better and figure something else out. In addition, moving forward, regardless of our automation status or not, in order for us to push this forward in the end to USGS and using their NHD editing training that we've all been through, there are specific Esri extensions that are needed in order for that tool to be active in ArcMap. And fortunately, USGS is able to distribute those out for us upon our analysis. So it was an extension we had to apply for, and we have since acquired it, but it needs to be added to our license manager so that we can start using the tool. And hopefully then with that, we are able to do a batch transfer or kind of copy and paste the line work we've been working on and analyzing, and using the conflation tool as the part of the NHD editing to get it all merged together with what NHD has and get it all incorporated. And then repeat that all for the next hooking. So we have a long road ahead of us still, but we've come a long, long ways in the past year. So, you know, like I said, as you know, AGIC is all volunteer based. So if you want to help, feel free. We could use it, and we all have other jobs to be doing as well. So please join us if you have any questions. Please let me know. This is my email here. I guess if Elizabeth or Jay has any comments from the participants, I'd be happy to answer them.
So Mariah, if anyone wants to become a volunteer, who do they need to contact? How would they go about it?
Yep.
Can they contact yourself or through the email?
Yes, if you would like to be helping with this, thank you. Yes, please send me an email. I am spearheading the data analysis team, so I can get you incorporated in everything that we're doing and get you on board with our team meetings. So again, thank you.
And one more question. Yep. So what's been your biggest challenge so far?
Probably, I mean, honestly, the actual reviewing of the data. And like I mentioned, you know, because this is all volunteer work, you know, it's the time of, you know, after your 9 to 5, you're looking at, you know, the database and figuring out what lines up, what's not. And I think that has been the longest part of this whole project, is getting that first area completed. But, you know, to cover all of this data of Arizona, that's partly why we're trying to get it automated. But I think just the actual reviewing of the data, finding the time for all of us to get together over the last, you know, 6 to 8 months to dive in and figure out what lines are accurate, which ones aren't, and that sort of thing. I think that has been the biggest hurdle I can say now, have gotten over. So fortunately, I think we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but still a long road ahead of us.
Thank you, Mariah. I forgot to mention that Mariah, she participates in multiple AGIC committees, and she's currently heading this. She's the lead for the NHD pilot work group and the analysis team. So thank you, that was really good.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I don't think I see any other questions. If there are no other questions, I don't know if Jay, if you can, do you see any other questions? So Jay?
I do not see any other questions.
Okay. So Drew, are you ready? We can introduce Drew.
Okay, yes, this is Drew. I'm ready.
Okay, so Drew is going to give a presentation on updates to the National Hydrography Dataset. He is the National Map Liaison for Arizona and Southern California, and has worked for the National Geospatial Program within the USGS since 2007. He works with local, state, and other federal agencies to coordinate mapping production, maintenance, standards, and planning in support of the national map. So we look forward to your presentation, Drew.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see what happens. Oops, I don't think I'm enabled for sharing yet. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see how that works. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, that looks all right. Okay, great. Thank
Yep,
you.
looks good.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are now with National Hydrography Dataset updates, and how we can use data. How can we make data updated through state data and local data such as these, and with the tools that we have. A little look towards future too, with respect to elevation of the resource, and kind of build on what Mariah was just talking about. Again, my name is Drew Decker. I'm the National Map Liaison for Arizona. I'm based out of California. And moving on, oops. There we go. Okay, a little bit of background here. National Hydrography Datasets. There are 3 of them that we work with. We've already heard quite a bit about National Hydrography Dataset. Again, this is a collection really of surface water features with its origins in the 1 to 24,000 K topo maps. It's been around quite a while. So a lot of the blue lines that were on the maps were lifted off of that, digitized, turned into a digital product, and now are available as video there. And now are available, of course, as a digital product. The watershed boundary data set, and I'll have another slide on that in a second. This is a selection of drainage basins at, we have 8 scales. We already have 6 different levels that are complete for the whole country. I'll mention that in a moment. And they're in a nested hierarchy across the country. You can see this, how we have a large river basin that may be subdivided into smaller groups. And each basin, of course, will host a collection of NHD data like this, surface water features. And then we have something now called NHD Plus High Resolution that combines the NHD line work with the watershed or drainage basin characteristics of the watershed boundary data set, and adds elevation. So in essence, it burns in the hydro features and the WBD into elevation, take it from a 10-meter DEM, and it creates a hydrographic framework. So starting to integrate elevation and hydro. Okay. And so a little bit more on NHD. Again, it's a surface water drainage network in the GIS format. It's ostensibly at a 1 to 24,000 scale. It can be more detailed, it can be less detailed. Typically 1 to 24 or better, wherever we can do that. It has an addressing system in a way in that you can use the different reaches in here. Each of the lines, say, is a reach, and you can calculate a distance along that reach or percentage, for example, of the length of a reach, and come up with an equivalent kind of as an address. So it's sort of like the street address in a way. It also has other variables. Mariah went over some of those, such as flow direction, it'll have a name, etc. And so that helps provide context and navigation. And in other words, able to go up and downstream with NHD. It is multi-scale. You can see we've had some different data sets collected along the way. This may have come from a 1 to 24,000 scale map, but we've had, there have been a lot of differences in how the data were first transferred into NHD from the paper maps, which we've seen in some of the test areas we've been examining in southern Arizona, as well as different inputs from all sorts of different stewards, other agencies, USGS. And so you can see right now, NHD does host a number of different scales. The example of some data here in Indiana, which had, I believe, a LiDAR origin versus some of the other data in Illinois. Ditto with Vermont, which I don't think was LiDAR based, but it was based on a high resolution aerial photo of New York over here. To work with that, we have something called a visibility filter attribute, which allows people to represent the data at different scales. It's still a little illustration here shows how data can be shown at different scales. As you get to smaller and smaller scales, start losing some of the features, and of course, it's more appropriate scale. You can see here in this little table, we have the viz filter really run from 1 to 24,000 out towards 5 million. As we start getting more and more data, we thought, well, where can you go to smaller or larger scale, I should say, smaller number than 1 to 24,000 scale. And that's something that's not available yet. But if you get higher resolution data, that may be something that can be used in future visibility or different applications using NHD. So anyways, this is an attribute that has these coded values. It shows, the approximate scales to use. It's available for flow lines, water bodies, areas, and all sorts of features really that you see in NHD now. Not available outside the continental US, but it is available for Arizona and neighboring states. Watershed boundary data set. Okay, for more information on this, we have this expanded view of the little picture I showed you earlier. So what we find is that data across the country all fit within a watershed, right? And these can be broken down into smaller and smaller units. And it's a progressive multi-level hierarchical drainage system. And each level is assigned progressive 2-digit hydrologic unit code. Okay, we call them HU, hydrologic unit, which describes kind of where the unit is in the country and what's the level of it. So for example, this is showing a California example here. Okay, in Arizona, we're region 15 here. You can take region 15 and you can subdivide that. When you do that, you add 2 more digits, 1501, 1502. And from there on, you can further subdivide it so that you have up to a 12-digit hydrologic unit now that is complete across the country. Okay, we call it a 12-digit HUC or a 6th-level hydrologic unit. And right now, those are complete across the country, and the size of those are between 10 to 40,000 acres. So in the future, we do have some 14 and even 16-digit HUCs in some other parts of the country, but very few so far. HG plus high resolution, I mentioned that earlier. And again, now we're starting to mix in elevation with that. 1 to 24K NHG WBD, we talked about that, with the DEM data, starting to connect kind of the terrestrial characteristics, right, the physiography to the stream network. And it's going to be useful for water quality research and infrastructure engineering. And it's been done in a beta version for the continental United States and a number of the outside areas too, not for Alaska yet. We are starting to work on a update of that. In fact, we'll be doing some work soon in region 15 to just make an update of NHD plus. So all 3 of the data sets together support many different uses and access. We do offer access through downloads. We have services that let you just bring in the data, multiple different variations of it. NHD, the WBD, for example, and you can bring them in as a service, so you don't have to download it. There are many uses, of course. We use them in cartography. We keep them on the new topo maps now, GIS analysis, web apps, engineering, and hydrologic modeling. So many uses, of course, for hydro data, as we all know. Stewardship, Mariah talked about that too. And yes, this is how we help update the data. So you can see how many different features are. We're 10 million miles, a stream network, 8 million water bodies. And so local user knowledge goes a long way to accurate mapping. So the stewards who are in states, often state agencies or local agencies, even other federal agencies sometimes act as a steward, they have the local knowledge and expertise. They know what's going on in the environment as opposed to somebody in a mapping shop that may be out of state or far away. So we can use the stewardship program to help update the data and get this information and build it into NHD, such as, for example, is the stream perennial or intermittent? Okay, the steward would have information on that, and we can help update our data through this attribution. So that is very valuable in pulling that forward. Again, that's why I talked about finding the best data set for the state. What's the best representative data set for the state that could be used in future updates down the road quite a ways. So we have a number of states that participate in stewardship program, 41 states, District of Columbia, and it's been great working with Arizona and AGIC on this project to start looking at what's here in Arizona, how could it be used to help update NHG and hydrography in general, really, for the state in the future. Taking a step back with NHD, we have something called the National Hydrography Infrastructure Working Group. There are other agencies at the federal level that we work with. And for example, USGS, BLM, Bureau of Reclamation are some of them. And so that helps provide input and collaboration on the directions of the data sets, priorities, what are some of the technologies and data inputs we need to use. USGS, by the way, for us, this is very important. We are charged with mapping inland waters. So we use this as this justifies our need to collect data for NHD, right, and related data sets, and have that as available as a national asset for public use. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, USGS work together on that. A lot of the surface water here, a lot of the wetland information from Fish and Wildlife, and together we cover the inland water. And we have many applications for the three data sets. We had a study we worked on a few years ago, HRBS, Hydrography Requirements Benefit Study. So that documented many business uses, or business use examples across numerous federal agencies, all 50 states, including Arizona, and some tribal governments and associations, and some of the major applications, including ecological flows, bill response, infrastructure engineering, modeling, etc. So many different uses for the data set. So one of the primary findings of this was the need for integration of hydro and elevation data, such as what we're starting to see with NHD+. So to do this, as we're starting to work with more and more high resolution elevation data, how can we do that with hydrography? So could there be more investment in hydrography? And the HRBS study that I just mentioned in the last slide also came up with some values on projected benefits. So if we were to have updated data, newer data for hydro, what kind of benefits could it provide? And HRBS was able to start listing some of these and strewed across these different applications here that were well documented in HRBS. Looking forward further, we are working on a call for action, which is to look at future directions of hydrography. And it's looking to help integrate elevation and hydrography data down the road, the kind of a next generation of 3D elevation data. And since we have LiDAR and IFSAR available in the country, that could be used as input to start generating other line work, which then could be enhanced with local data and local knowledge through stewardship programs. Looking here, as I mentioned, we've had a lot of data that started out with the 1 to 24K topo sheets, and the updates have been sporadic from, say, USGS and others. So we have had a different collection of scales, data set densities, for example, and so that's something that elevation data, such as we've seen with NHG Plus, could help potentially alleviate. Again, using that as a possible data set down the road, and it may have a more consistent, data. Really, data density, data quality, etc. is kind of the framework. So this is a thing we've shown before. The future, and this could be several years away. As we slowly move into this, you need to finish the elevation data. And there need to be new standards and other things developed. However, this could serve as a framework for future elevation enhanced hydro. Again, serving the country, but based on input from state data as a source to help modify this. And but that's a future direction, several years down the road. Hydrologic units could be generated from catchments. That's a research topic right now, looking to see how you could take a catchment for each stream segment and group them together to create your hydrologic units. So looking at the stewardship model now, and also as we may be going in the future, you can see here we've got a number of states. An example, we have a lot of state stewards. However, they may have state agency components. They may have local agency components. They may even have federal components too. In Arizona, we've learned today gets the state and local input and interest in stewardship, which works well with the model. Looking at communications within hydro, we have a hydrographic data community, the HDC, which has its own login page and site. That's where people can download software and information on updating the data and helping update the data as we are now, currently through NHG program and stewardship program. We have a number of editing tools and utilities, and some folks here in Arizona have indeed taken the training over the last year or so. We have videos on resources on here. Several of these are based on instructor-led training, such as NHG Update, WBD Update. Both have instructor-led training, and again, people here have taken this training while working on the pilot evaluation and also looking into the state sources. Related to that, we have some other tools which can build on NHD, such as tying events, which may be outside data, tying it to the NHD. If you had non-hydro feature data, but you wanted to link it into NHD, you could do that using the HEM tool, for example. Right now, we are working with what we call HMP, Hydro Maintenance Portal. This is where people go to check out data. Stewards go here, they check out. I've got a couple of them checked out right now in Arizona. And for the pilot work or any future work beyond that, this is where the state would go to check out data. They're able to check data out, use the tools that we heard about earlier, and then and check the data back in and become part of the national data set. We have a markup application too, which stewards both work to look at that, review and approve suggestions from users. And in general, most of the markups do come from users, not the stewards per se, but data users anywhere in the country who can submit changes and suggestions for fixing. And since there's some in Arizona here, this is an older picture, but there's a number of them here that could be reviewed and updated over time. Together, we have a markup application and reviewer tool, which allows, say, the steward or the USGS to go in here and look at suggestions that come in and approve them and say, okay, yeah, this is okay. This is, again, the local knowledge that we have for the state. This is what a steward could help with a lot. Is the stream really perennial or is it intermittent? Should the stream be moved here or there? And based on the local knowledge. So again, it's very important to the future of NHD. And just a quick look at the pilot project area. Just the one, HUC 8 that we've heard about here. This is the upper San Pedro, and you can see the dense network, well, different densities too within here, kind of showing how the data have changed and how it's got a number of different sources in there of different scales and different densities too. So the Natural Resources Working Group has been reviewing this area among other parts of the state. And again, what's the best hydrography solution for the state? What are the best inputs for this in future hydro in Arizona? So some of the next steps again, Mariah already looked at those. What are the best sources for local state hydro data? What are some of the methods of updating data, substituting one for another, making edits, looking at demos and how to do that. And there may be some other personnel that can help with how data can be submitted and integrated into our data. And we still have the pilot checkout and updates made. One thing from a demo here is a little example showing an existing stream within the pilot hydrologic unit coming along, ending out in the field. Well, with the tools now, we can update that. We can erase it if it doesn't go, if it doesn't really exist anymore, we can move it so it may follow a path. Again, the steward could help guide us on that, by either making the changes themselves or substituting or bringing in other data sets, such as that was being evaluated for the state now. Here's a little quick look at the interface here of the editor. We're able to select a flow line, and then you may want to modify the geometry. Then people are able to go in here and manipulate the line. And again, this would be cataloged and tallied and then submitted back to us when the data set's checked in. So as a resource here to learn more, here's some links to the website for NHD. We have a newsletter which you can sign up for, and on a little list, and you would automatically receive news about it. The Twitter site and general questions for help from NHD. And from this website too, it takes you right to the data set. You're able to download the data and get information about the different data sets that we have now, like Energy Plus HR. And I think that's about it. So thank you very much. And here's my contact information. And here's an example of a DEM with hydro overlay from. So, and that's all I had. Are there any questions?
So thank you, Drew. That was a really good presentation. What percentage of the United States has been completed? Do you know?
In terms of with hydrography updates?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I don't really know.
Okay.
Because we have a number of areas that do not have a current steward, and some areas with stewards have different priorities and different means of updating. So I would have to look that up and find out. every area of the country may have had some fixes over time, but a true consistent, a review like we're doing here in the pilot area, that's different. And so I would suspect, considerably less than that. So I'll need to look at that.
Yeah, because I imagine some areas are probably, better and more consistent than others, or they just have more support for something like this, right?
Well, they may. Each state is different, has its own participants, its own needs, its own history with data, and you're correct. They're all different in how they handle this. There are areas that have not had data updated in years, right? Ever since we created the first NHG a number of years ago, and those are scattered all over the country. And so having, a steward will help really look at evaluating what's going on and seeing what steps need to be done to update it. Again, like I said, states are different. Some have might be coastally driven. Some have different agency setups and participants that will drive certain priorities within the state. So again, they're all quite different in how they approach NHD updating.
Thank you. That was an excellent explanation, and both presentations were really good and informative. Does anyone, let's see, does anyone have any questions? Any other questions?
There's a question in the Q&A. Somebody asked, how can we learn more about NHD training?
The hydro community page, and I'll have to go. Trying to go back to that slide. Well, let's see here. Stewardship and community will be the spot to go for information on training. The simplest way is to just contact me. The way that we offer training in NHD is it's offered monthly. Well, not every month, but most months at a fixed time, so people can sign up and then attend the training. I can help them get on the list and put them in touch with the right folks. So feel free to just contact me about that. Otherwise, stewardship and community page here can lead to that as well. But I'm happy to do that.
Excellent. We had another question just came in. Let's see. So Veronica wants to know if there's any mechanism for archiving historical stream locations, given that the data set is updated so frequently.
Yes, there is information on that. Depends if you're looking for the actual stream locations, i.e., how has it moved over time as it's been updated. That may be limited. We do have the original NHD from the topos, okay, the digital line graphs for that. One thing we do have is it may not be data that show how things were moved in terms of the graphics, but it does provide a metadata record of every feature. We have feature level metadata and how it was altered by either the steward or by the USGS. So we have metadata record saying this flow line was first added on such and such a date. Then it was modified by so-and-so for this reason. Then it was modified by somebody else for another purpose. And so we have that track record of how it was changed. In terms of like, is there a picture of it? How did it look? I'm not certain of that. I'd have to check on that. I don't know if that quite helps, but again, if there's someone who has an interest in a particular area, I can look into that for them.
Thanks, Drew. It doesn't look like there's any other questions in the chat.
Okay.
I think, and we'd like to remind everyone to take the survey. There's a survey, you could find it, I think, to the right of your session window. So that would be great if you could take it. And thank you, Mariah and Drew. Just really appreciate you going over this material.
Thank you very much.
So I think that ends our session.